CK3, A Game of Thrones. Every Dornish house explained. Let's get it. As usual, I'll be focusing on the canon and semi-canon houses, and even the non-canon ones, if they're interesting enough. Like, subscribe, and comment if you want to see this community grow. We do animated lore, we do Crusader Kings 3 videos. I've also got a cheeky Patreon for some bonus content. Alright, enough of that nonsense, let's dive into it. So Dorne is a kingdom-tier realm within the Empire of Westeros. Although, unlike the other regions, which are Lord Paramount sees, Dorne is a principality, owing to the fact that it's more autonomous, politically and culturally. The ruling House of Dorne is of course House Nymeris Martell. Their sigil is a spear thrust through a sun on a burnt orange sky. Their words are unbowed, unbent, unbroken, which also happens to be the name of the greatest episode of television ever. The Martells were lords within Dorne until the arrival of Princess Nymeria and the Rhoynar. Nymeria and her 1,000 ships fled to Dorne from Essos, thus changing the cultural and ethnic landscape of Dorne. Princess Nymeria and her husband Mors conquered all of Dorne, and then the House of Nymeris Martell has ruled ever since as the Princes of Dorne. The ruler is Prince Doran Martell himself, here he is. By the time of the main books he's suffering from gout, but it looks like he hasn't got that yet. Deceitful, calm, patient. Yeah, Doran is a man who likes to sit on his plans and wait. He's married to Mellario of Norvos, although they're estranged by the time of the books. With her he has 3 kids, only 2 in the mod so far. Arianne Martell, arrogant, charming, and pretty. Arianne Martell is a very headstrong woman who's the heir to Dorne. It's worth mentioning that Dorne is far more egalitarian than the rest of Westeros, which is why Arianne is the heir. The firstborn is always the heir regardless of their sex, which is why Quentyn is not the heir. In A Feast for Crows, she plans to crown Myrcella Baratheon to deliberately stoke up a war between the Lannisters and Dorne to get revenge for all of the horrible things the Lannisters have inflicted on House Martell. This goes awry, but it turns out her father has other plans. He wants to send his son, Quentyn, to try and marry Daenerys and aid a Targaryen invasion of Westeros. There we go, Quentyn, he's only 1 year old here. But his journey ends up failing dramatically as he gets burnt to death by one of Dany's dragons. Doran and Mellario also have a son called Trystane, but he hasn't been born yet. Doran's younger brother is the infamous Oberyn Martell, known as the Red Viper, as we can see here. Arrogant, vengeful, lustful, brave. I feel like it's missing something. I feel like there needs to be one more. Oh yeah, no, there we go. Oberyn, of course, is the man who ends up being killed by the Mountain during Tyrion's trial by combat. So in the books he has about 8 or 9 children, but as of Robert's Rebellion here he only has 4, all of whom have different mothers. After these 4 he gets Ellaria Sand as his paramour and then has the rest of the Sand Snakes with her. Here we have Obara Sand, who's the sort of warrior. We have Nymeria Sand, who's the beautiful scheming lady. When her father gets popped, she's informed of the news while abed with a pair of sisters, and so the mod has made her homosexual. Oberyn's third bastard is Tyene Sand, who goes on to become a Scepter. And yeah, the Sand Snakes all look very different. So Obara is supposed to be quite tall and strong, Nymeria is sort of dark and willowy, Tyene is blonde with blue eyes, and then Alaras, oh sorry, my bad, Sorella, is the daughter of a Summer Islander lady, so she's mixed race. Whereas in the show they sort of made all the Sand Snakes were basically just discount Obara times 3 for some reason. In the books, the Sand Snakes join Arianne's plot to try and stir up war between the Lannisters and Dorne. It fails of course, but they're all given their own tasks. So Obara is sent to kill Darkstar. Don't worry, we'll get into him later. Nymeria is sent to have a place on the Small Council in King's Landing to keep an eye on political events. And Tyene is sent to infiltrate the Faith in King's Landing. Sorella doesn't appear to be involved in any of this political stuff. She's currently at the Citadel, disguised as a man called Alaras, unless you believe certain theorists online, in which case Alaras is just a random man who happens to have the same name backwards, because of course, why not? Doran's sister is Princess Elia Martell. You killed her! She was quite sickly and had trouble siring children, so they've given her feeble and barren. They've made her sterile. She's the wife of Rhaegar Targaryen, the Prince of Dragonstone, and had 2 children with him, Rhaenys and Aegon. So Elia was butchered by the Mountain during the sack of King's Landing, and Princess Rhaenys was stabbed to death by Sir Amory Lorch. Depending on who you believe, Aegon was either killed by the Mountain or smuggled out of King's Landing by Varys. And he has returned to Westeros with Jon Connington and the Golden Company to install himself as the rightful king. Although many theories say that the Aegon who's coming back is not a Targaryen at all, but a member of House Blackfyre. The death of Elia and her children, as well as the death of Oberyn, is one of the core reasons Arianne and the Sand Snakes want their revenge. As well as the death of Sir Luwin Martell, Prince Doran's uncle, a member of the Kingsguard. It says here he's lustful, he apparently had a paramour despite being a member of the Kingsguard, and he's compassionate, apparently he was very nice to Arianne when she was a child, and he's brave. He fought at the Battle of the Trident. He was slain by Sir Lyn Corbray with the Valyrian steel sword Lady Forlorn. Also, nice touch here, Doran's cousin is Manfred Martell, who is the Castellan of Sunspear, I believe. There are three main cultures within Dorne. We have the Salt Dornish, who live by the sea, the Sand Dornish, who live in the deserts and dunes and so on, tend to have darker skin, and then the Stone Dornish, who live in the marches and the mountains, and they have the fairest of skin and eyes and hair compared to the other Dornish. So we'll start by looking at the houses of the Salt Dornish over here. So House Martell rule over the Duchy of Sunspear, and directly over the County of Sunspear. And here we have Sunspear itself. I mentioned this in a previous video, the ship-like design here is influenced by Andal architecture, while the domes and the spires are Rhoynish. The Shadow City is the name of the city that sits beneath Sunspear. The Barony of the Water Gardens is directly owned by the Martells, and the Water Gardens is a place that we see in the books. Doran likes to visit it and watch the children playing in the water. This island in the mod is called Isle Nymeros, no doubt named after Nymeria, and it's ruled over by House Shells. Now there are actually two House Shells in Dorne. It's a reference to a certain character, but that character appears in the other house that we'll look at later on, so I don't know whether this is an offshoot or whether maybe the modders got a bit mixed up because there's only one house member here, but here we go. The province of Castle Deadglade. Oh, yikes.
I didn't know it was going to come off like that. Pretty sure you did.
The Martells also rule over the county of Plankytown, which is a place in canon. It's the most populous and thriving city within Dorne. It's a trading town at the mouth of this river, the River Greenblood. The province of Viper's Nest is ruled by House Hood, and again there's a character with the surname Hood in Dorne, but House Hood appears in another part of Dorne with that character, so again they've sort of reused this house. I don't know if it's an accident or if it's intentional or whatever. The county of Husk Flats is ruled by House Shell, not to be confused with House Shells. So House Shell doesn't appear to be canon, but in the past there was a first man king, King Dywyn Shell. Before the arrival of the Andals, he claimed to be the king of the Fingers in the Vale, so maybe his descendants made it to Dorne? The toughest shells. The county of Stinkwater. Lovely. Ruled by House Wade. House Wade is an extinct first man house that was conquered by the Martells, and their words here are from the first, as a reference to their first man origin. So because Dorne isn't as fleshed out as other areas in the books, it means that the modders have looked for extinct houses in the past and given them minor roles. Next we have the Duchy of Broken Arm. So yeah, the land that linked Westeros to Essos was destroyed ages ago, and so it's known as the Broken Arm. So the Broken Arm is ruled by House Santagar. Here we have a spotted leopard wielding an axe, in plain sight. So the Santagars are Andal kings from the Andal invasion. So Simon is the head of House Santagar in the books. His daughter Silver is known as Spotted Silver, because she's freckled. She's a childhood friend of Arianne Martell, and helps her in her plot to crown Myrcella and stoke up the war. When Doran breaks this plot up, she is punished by being sent back to her father, who marries her off to the old Lord Eldon Estamont. There's another Santagar in the books called Aron Santagar, so let's find him. Ah, he's just Simon's brother. So Sir Aron Santagar is the Master at Arms in King's Landing. He's described as being vain but honest, and as we see here, arrogant and honest traits. Also fashionable for some reason. So Sir Aron Santagar, during the Rite of King's Landing, he is pulled from his horse and murdered by the mob. The Santagars here are also the Counts of Rockwell and Spotswood. There's also the County of Torchwood, which isn't in the books, but I suspect it's a cheeky Doctor Who reference. So here we have House Ladybright, which is actually a house in the books. Although the mod has created their sigil, a lady holding a torch. Sort of Florence Nightingale-esque, the greatest treasure. So Elise Ladybright here is the Lord Treasurer to Doran Martell in the books. There's also a Jane Ladybright who accompanies Arianne to the Stormlands in the Winds of Winter sample chapter, but I can't find her, so maybe she hasn't been born yet. I can't see any names that might be a further reference to Doctor Who, but the next Salt Dornish duchy is the Duchy of Ghost Hills, ruled by House Tolland. So the sigil is canon, It's a green dragon swallowing its own tail to sort of represent infinity. Time has no end or beginning. So Nymella is the Lady of Ghost Hill, and in the books she has 2 daughters, although only one has been born as of yet. The first daughter is Valenna Tulland, who is described as being, tall and beautiful. And she has another daughter, Tiora, who is described as being plump and shy, and she has prophetic dreams. Could the dragon sigil indicate some kind of old Valyrian heritage, and that's why her daughter has maybe dragon dreams? Or it could be that they're descended from the first men, and she could be a greenseer. The Tollands rule over all of their counties. There's the county of Nymecairn, which may indicate perhaps this is where Princess Nymeria is buried. The county of Ghost Hills itself has a lot of fun names. Ghastly Cliffs, Grimebarrow, Pale Island, Hall of the Dead. The next Salt Dornish duchy is the Duchy of Lemonwood, ruled by House Dalt, whose sigil are a bunch of lemons on purple, the finest fruit. In the books they're a house of landed knights. There's no Lady Sybil, but Sir Deziel Dalt is the Knight of Lemonwood, and he has a younger brother called Andre, there he is, known as Dre. Both Deziel and Dre aspired to marry Arianne Martell when they were younger, and Andre in particular experimented sexually with Arianne. Unfortunately, he released the lemon juice too early. So he also takes part in Arianne's plot to crown Myrcella, and Doran punishes in quotation marks, by sending him to Norvos to spend 3 years in the service of his estranged wife Malario. The Dalts rule over the counties of Lemonwood itself, as well as Sour Market and Sweetwater. Okay, yeah, I get it. Lemons. I get it, lemons. Sourton, Tanghelm, Woodrind. Okay, yeah, come on. Pipshaw, Old Sourkeep. Swear to God, there better not be any bullshit here. City of Citron. Are you fucking... I'm gonna dream of lemons tonight. This is like House Bean all over again. The county of Drillwater Islands, these islands here, is ruled over by House Shells, not to be confused with the earlier House Shells I showed. So this is named after one particular individual, a knight called Sir Garibald Shells. Haha! This guy's grandson, Garibald Shells, who accompanies Arianne to the Stormlands to meet Aegon during the Winds of Winter sample chapter that I mentioned. The Salt Dornish Duchy of the Salt Shore is ruled over by House Gargalen, which is an awesome name. The sigil is a red cockatrice with a black serpent in its beak, standing tall. We don't know much about this house, just that the Lord, Tremont Gargalen, accompanied Oberyn Martell when he travels to King's Landing for Joffrey's wedding, and all of the Gargalen vassals are non-canon. The final Salt Dornish Duchy is the Duchy of the Tor, ruled by House Jourdain. So House Jourdain is a reference to Robert Jordan, the author of the Wheel of Time series, which I haven't actually read yet. Animated Wheel of Time videos, who's up for that? So we have the sigil is a golden quill, let it be written. And the Tor is a reference to Tor Books, who published the Wheel of Time series. The Lord is even called Trebor, which is Robert backwards. The Jourdains were once kings within Dorne, but they later became the vassals of House Ironwood. So Trebor's daughter and heir, Myria Jourdain, also accompanied Oberyn to King's Landing in the 3rd book. That's the thing with Dorne not being super fleshed out. There aren't that many houses described, so the modders had to take these big houses, make them dukes, but then also put them in control of their own counties. Like I said, I haven't read Wheel of Time, but I've gone out of my way to see if all of these baronies are references to the book series, without spoiling myself. So the Barony of Midnight Tower is apparently a reference to the 13th book, the Towers of Midnight. The City of Andor is a reference to a nation called Andor. The City of Madding, apparently there's a city-state called Far Madding. And the County of Morrandie, apparently there's a nation called Morrandie. And Tarwin's Gap. So Tarwin's Gap is a place in the mountains somewhere in Wheel of Time. A mountain pass, that's it. Just the mountain. I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's cool that they threw in a bunch of Wheel of Time references. I'm sure there are loads more that I've missed out on. So let me know in the comments if there are any more. So let's look at Scourgehead, which isn't actually a duchy. It has yet to be created, although it looks like you can create it. House Briar would be the dukes if you turn this into a duchy. So in the books, House Briar is an extinct Dornish house of first men who came from the River Greenblood. Hence their words in the mod, the greenest of blood. So again, the mod has resurrected this extinct house. And their sigil appears to be brambles. The county of Stedding is ruled over by the Jourdains, even though it's not within their duchy. So apparently Steddings is a reference to where the Ogier live. I don't have a clue what that means. The counties of Flatwater and the Scourge are ruled over by House Ironwood, and I'll be getting into them later. And finally, within this uncreated duchy, we have the county of Gaston Grey, which is a great name. This island is Gaston Grey. It's basically a prison island, like sort of Alcatraz or Azkaban. It's where the worst of the worst are sent to. And as we can see here, it looks like a sort of prison complex. And a city nearby, you know, you've got to trade, got to get some resources in. Now that we've looked at Scourgehead, let's move on to the Sandy Boys. The Sandy Dornish. So to the south is where Dorne is a hot sandy desert. The Red Dunes are ruled by House Vaith. Here we have 3 black leopards, steel in sand. We don't know much about this house, just that the current lord is Daeron Vaith. And in fact, one of the famous 9 mistresses of Aegon IV was this woman, Lady Kysella Vaith. So when King Daeron I invaded Dorne, a bunch of hostages were sent back to King's Landing, and one of them was Kysella Vaith. Daeron's cousin, Prince Aegon, who went on to become King Aegon IV, Aegon the Unworthy, Aegon the suspiciously not fat. Kysella was kept in Aegon's personal chambers, and she became his mistress, although she had no bastards by him. It's said that Kysella was obsessed with Aegon, and after, of course, naturally he grew bored of her and she was sent back to Dorne, she still believed herself to be his one true love, and she refused to marry, as we can see here. Refusing marriage and melancholic. To me, that reads as Stockholm Syndrome. She was kidnapped, sent to King's Landing, basically sort of manipulated and dominated by Prince Aegon, who was using her for sex, and then she developed this sort of obsession with him and genuine belief that he was in love with her. In the Sworn Sword, the second Dunk and Egg novella, Dunk and Egg have left Dorne, and they talk about an adventure that we never get to see involving a mad Lady Vaith, and it could be a reference to Kysella Vaith, because she did die as an old lady. So, big surprise, House Vaith rules over all of their counties, apart from one. So here's a fun little Easter egg. In the county of Red Waste, bordering Brimstone, we have the province of Buried Keep, ruled over by House Dryland. Now, House Dryland was an extinct house that ruled over Brimstone. The last of the house was King Lucifer Dryland, who was sent to the wall by Nymeria after her invasion. His name's Lucifer, and he ruled over a place called Hellholt and so on, Brimstone. There's clearly a bit of a satanic reference there, but we'll look at that when we move on to Brimstone. So you can say this is some minor offshoot that survived. The one county not ruled by the Vaiths is the Lordship of Kilburn, ruled over by House Brooke. House Brooke is yet another extinct Dornish house from the past, descended from Andal. The Brookes are yet another extinct house, descended from Andals from the River Greenblood. Oh shit, I almost forgot. The Duchy of Godsgrace, the easternmost Sandy Dornish duchy. Godsgrace is ruled by House Illyrian. We have a golden hand, no foe may pass. House Illyrian used to be an Andal house that ruled over House Martell. The current lady is Delone Illyrian, and her son, Sir Rion, accompanies Oberyn to King's Landing. Now Rion has a bastard son who has been born, Daemon Sand. Daemon is a handsome bisexual king and a great fighter. He's the man who took Arianne Martell's virginity and later asked Doran Martell for her hand in marriage, but of course he was refused because he's just a bastard. Bastards are accepted more in Dorne, of course, but Arianne's a princess. He squired for Oberyn Martell and was later knighted by him, and there are many rumours that the two were actually lovers as well. He also attends his father in going to King's Landing with Oberyn. And later he becomes Arianne's sworn shield and accompanies her to the Stormlands to meet Aegon, which she's a bit frustrated by because, of course, as I said, the two have a bit of a complex history. They are the lords of all but one county. Within the county of Seven Dunes is the province of Holt Castle, which is a fun little reference to House Holt. So again, House Holt is one of those extinct First Men houses from the River Greenblood. Although, unlike the other duchies where they've resurrected these houses, it looks like House Holt doesn't exist anymore, but their castle still remains, and there's another noble family in charge of that castle. There's also the Lordship of Orangewood, which doesn't exist in the books, but is clearly a reference to Lemonwood. They border each other. Oh, there are going to be more citrus puns, oh my god. Orangewood here is ruled over by House Hull, yet another extinct First Man house from the River Greenblood. So interestingly enough, there's a city on the island of Driftmark called Hull. So this is probably unconnected, right? Because there's a town called Hull on that island, and there's a house called Hull in Dorne. You know, how are they connected? But the words of House Velaryon are the old, the true, the brave. The words of House Hull of Orangewood in the mod are brave and true. So what's going on there? Maybe they came from Hull. See, their sigil's a broken ship. Maybe their first men who initially settled on the island of Driftmark, and then they travelled down the Greenblood and they crashed, and then they settled. I don't know, I'm stretching it, but it's fun to think about. So, God's Grace and Red Dunes, sandy, hot places. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Let's move on to Brimstone. So, Brimstone here is literally in the middle of the Dornish desert. This is the hottest place in Dorne. So yeah, King Lucifer used to rule over Brimstone, which is known for its sulphurous waters. Yeah, you get it, it's hell. It's hell. The Duchy of Brimstone is ruled by House Ulla. Apparently there's a famous Dornish saying about this house. Half the Ullas are half mad, and the other half are worse. So the sigil of House Ulla is inspired by a past event where a bunch of rivals were locked inside the castle of Hellholt and burned alive. Deserts of fire. So Lord Harmon Ulla accompanies Oberyn to King's Landing along with his younger brother, Sir Ulwick. Lord Harmon has a bastard daughter, Alaria Sand, who goes on to become Oberyn's paramour and mother of 4 of his children. So I guess this guy is kind of Oberyn's father-in-law, not really. Father by not law. Rockin' the tash though, look. The Ullas rule all of their counties, every single one. Alright, enough of these citrusy names, let's look at some hellish names. Brimstone, Hellholt, Burning Dunes, Bloodbridge, Sulphur Flats, Will Burn. If you go to hell, you will burn. Steamfall, that's a bit less, Jackal Run. Okay, I don't know the connection there, but that does sound kind of cool. We've got the Barony of Hellgate Hall, the City of Dark Arch, the province of Morbidmund, Madness Tower, Hellhound Town, Dantelion. Ah, that's cool. Dantelion must be a reference to Dante's Inferno. Skinfire, the City of Flesh and Bone. Okay, this is too much. This is too much. The Duchy of Oldwell hasn't been created yet, but you can put House Fowler in charge of it. We'll be diving into House Fowler later. All of these counties are ruled by dukes that surround it. So Shady Sands and Drywell are ruled by House Wells, Pronghorn is ruled by House Ulla, First Well is ruled by House Fowler, and the Dust Bowl is ruled by House Corgyle. The province of Drywell is ruled by House Wells, which I mentioned before, but this appears to be the official one. There appear to be 2 houses called House Wells in Westeros. One is in Dorne, one is in the north. So there's a Sir Theoden Wells, who becomes the commander of the Warriors' Sons under the High Sparrow. And there's a Sir William Wells, who accompanies Quentyn Martell on his mission to travel to Meereen and marry Daenerys. So in this mod, Theoden Wells belongs to the northern Wells house, while Willem Wells belongs to the Dornish one, which obviously makes sense because he accompanies Quentyn. Unfortunately, he ends up getting slain by pirates. So if we move on to the Duchy of Sandstone, that is the final sandy Dornish duchy. Speaking of House Corgyle, they are the Dukes of Sandstone. Their sigil is 3 black scorpions on red, which is really cool. This blood will burn. House Corgyle are of Andal descent. The current lord is Quentyn, and he has 2 sons, Sir Gullion and Sir Aaron. Aaron accompanies Oberyn to King's Landing, because apparently everyone fucking does. If you're a Dornish character, you've either accompanied Oberyn to King's Landing, or you're part of Ariane's conspiracy to crown Myrcella. So Lord Quentyn's uncle is Jantos, who is none other than the Lord Commander at the Night's Watch. He was the 996th Lord Commander. It's kind of cool that someone born in the sandy, hot, southernmost point of Dorne got sent all the way up to the Wall in the snow and bitter cold and became the Lord Commander. Oh my goodness. So yeah, the Corgyles appear to be the counts of all of these. Lastly, we'll be looking at the stony Dornish houses. They are called so because they live in the mountainous regions, the Marchlands, dividing Dorne from the Reach and the Stormlands. Throughout its history, the Dornish and the Stormlanders and the Reachmen have attempted to cross over the mountains and skirmish and invade and attack each other. But these mountains are essentially why Dorne remains independent. The Stone Dornish are of Andal heritage, and unlike the Salty and the Sand Dornish, they don't live in the super hot, sunny area of Dorne, and they haven't mixed as much with the Rhoynish. As a result, the Stone Dornish tend to look a lot more Andal, with fair skin and fair hair and bright eyes. So first, let's start down here, with the Duchy of the Torrentine. Named so because the River Torrentine flows in here from the Summer Sea. This is ruled over by House Dane, one of the most simultaneously mysterious and fascinating houses in all of Westeros. Their sigil is a white sword crossed over a shooting star on purple. Everything about this house is just cool. So, they were founded by a man who saw a shooting star crash onto this island, the island of Starfall. And from this star, this meteorite, the man forged a sword named Dawn. And this is an ancestral sword, but not like Valyrian steel. Now, Valyrian steel swords are usually passed down to whoever the heir is, whereas this sort of pale, milky white meteor sword, Dawn, is passed down to whichever Dane deserves it. Not necessarily the heir, but the most noble, the most honourable, the best fighter. And if they wield Dawn, they are known as the Sword of the Morning. So the Danes are weird, because some of them are described as having silver hair, some have dark hair. A lot are described as having purple eyes, which would indicate Valyrian heritage, although Gurm has been sort of cryptic about that. Apparently Gurm has made the Dane family tree, but he refuses to release it because there might be spoilery stuff. And I don't have a clue what that means, but it's very exciting. You know, it's almost like I made a video about House Dane. Oh wait, I have! On Patreon! So yeah, if you're interested, there is an animated history of House Dane on my Patreon. Before I researched that video, I wasn't necessarily a huge House Dane fan. I kind of thought they were a bit overrated. But having looked into them more, I was like, no, they are pretty cool. So, during Robert's Rebellion, we don't know who the Lord was. Here, it's someone called Lord Beric. We do know of 3 Danes, though. Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning and wielder of Dawn, a member of the King's Guard. He fought at the Tower of Joy, protecting Lyanna Stark, and he was slain. Supposedly he was slain by Ned Stark, but in the books, Ned says that he would have died if not for Howland Reed saving his life, and in the show they have it so that Howland stabs him in the back. We're not entirely sure what happened, but we'll probably find out in the future. But yeah, Sir Arthur is meant to be the sort of this fearless paragon, of virtue and honour. He's everything a knight should be. His sister is Ashara Dane, who is described as being one of the most beautiful ladies in the Seven Kingdoms, with violet eyes and dark hair. Lots of people had a thing for Ashara. Ned Stark apparently was in love with her, and supposedly she was in love with him as well. There are also rumours that Ned Stark's brother Brandon liked her and that they may have slept together, and so Barristan Selmy remembers Ashara getting pregnant by a Stark, more likely to be Brandon. Barristan Selmy himself seemed to have a crush on her. He wanted to win the tourney at Harrenhal so that he could name her his Queen of Love and Beauty. Just in case you think that's cute, I'm just going to remind you of how old Barristan is in comparison. But yeah, whether she was in love with Ned or whether she had a child or whatever, we do know for a fact that Ned Stark returned from the Tower of Joy to give Dawn back to House Dane and to tell Ashara that her brother had died, and she threw herself from the Pale Sword Tower into the sea and she died. Although Gurm said her body was never found, so maybe she's still alive. Some characters and even some readers think that she's the mother of Jon Snow, but that's probably a red herring. And their sibling is Illyria Dane. Now Illyria here is 0 years old, which I think is a bit of a mistake. So at the start of the main series, Illyria Dane is betrothed to Beric Dondarrion. Now obviously Beric is in his early 20s, and it wouldn't make sense for Illyria to be too much older than him. However, making her this young is kind of weird because 1, there's a 20-year age gap between her and her older sister, and 2, Illyria very specifically went to the tourney at Harrenhal and remembers Ashara dancing with Ned Stark because she goes on to tell this to a young Edric Dane, who's the Lord Dane at the start of the books. So she should be a bit older here. So there's Ulrich Dane is the heir. Again, we don't know anything about an Ulrich Dane, but Lord Edric Dane is the child lord of Starfall at the start of the books, and Edric Dane goes on to join the Brotherhood Without Banners. He's only like 13 or something, so obviously he hasn't been born yet. Big surprise, they rule all of their counties. But there's something interesting I need to point out. So the counties of High Hermitage, Fields of Glass and Astermine are all ruled by Lady Inara Dane. There is a cadet branch of House Dane that rules over High Hermitage. They're a House of Landed Knights. Now, for some reason, they're not listed as a separate cadet branch. If we open the dynasty tree here, we can see that the House of High Hermitage are distant cousins. But for some reason, the mod has not made them a separate cadet branch. Ah, I see. So what they've done is the current Lord Beric, his father was Lord Davos Dane, but his mother was Lady Inara Dane, who's the head of the cadet branch. So that means the heir to High Hermitage is Alistair Dane, and his firstborn son, Gerald Dane. And at the start of the books, Gerald Dane is the Knight of High Hermitage. But he also refers to Arthur Dane as being his cousin. Now, cousin doesn't necessarily mean first cousin, but they've literally made them first cousins. So that's quite a smart and sneaky way around that. 9 years old and he's already got that fucking nickname, Darkstar. So he is wrathful, sadistic, brave, rowdy, and beautiful. He's everyone's favourite anime villain. Where's the of the night trait? I can't find that. So Gerald Dane was Gurm's attempt to write a deliberately villainous, badass character that all the fans would like. Except this villain turned out to be a bit of an emo whose only defining trait so far is being broody and trying and failing to kill a child. I think he's also one of Ariane Martel's lovers, but then again, you know, who isn't? Next up we have the Duchy of Blackmont. The Blackmonts border the lands of House Tarley in the Reach. My boy Randall. He looks like he'd be a good father. The Duchy of Blackmont is ruled over by House Blackmont. They've got a really metal sigil. It's a black vulture carrying a baby. What the hell? What was taken will return. Ooh. So we don't know too much about the Blackmonts except that Lady Lara and her 2 daughters attended Oberyn to King's Landing. Janessa and Peros, who hasn't been born yet. Next up we have the Duchy of the Prince's Pass, which is the main way to get through the Red Mountains of Dawn. It is ruled over by House Fowler, who rule from Castle Skyreach at the top of the mountain. Back when the Fowlers were self-proclaimed kings of stone and sky, it was known as the Wide Way, but after they got conquered by the Martells, it became known as the Prince's Pass. This is because the title of Prince is a Rhoynish custom, and during the conquest of Dawn by Daeron I, Lord Lionel Tyrell marched through the Prince's Pass with his army. The sigil of House Fowler is a blue hawk on white. Let me saw. The sigil is a blue hawk on silver. Let me saw. The lord is Franklin Fowler, known as the Old Hawk. The head of the house is also known as the Warden of Prince's Pass. So House Fowler is very much friendly with Ariane Martell. And in fact, they have a rivalry with House Ironwood, who are not in favour of Ariane being Doran's heir. But we'll get into that later. So Franklin has 2 daughters, the twins, Jane and Jenelyn Fowler. So they were the twins that Nymeria Martell was abed with when she found out about her father's death. Not so sure about this trait then. They rule over all but one of their counties. The City of Stone and Sky, a reference to the old title of the Fowler Kings. And within the bordering county of Princemarch, we have the province of the Tower of Joy, where Lyanna Stark was kept and guarded by 3 members of the Kingsguard. And it's very likely that she was giving birth to Jon Snow. Speaking of, Lord John of the Tower of Joy, hold on a second. So Hoodridge is ruled by House Hood. So this is another sort of minor house that's named after one particular character that has a copy in Sunspear. So the sigil here is a cheeky green hood. We know the way. So there's only one Hood who's mentioned, and that is Joss Hood. So Joss Hood accompanies Ariane to the Stormlands to meet Aegon. During that time, he flirts with Elia Sand, who's one of the Sand Snakes, who hasn't been born yet. Next in the Marcherlands, we have the Duchy of Red March, which borders the Stormlands, the county of Nightsong, ruled by House Caron. The Duchy of Red March is ruled by House... damn it. So the seat of House Manwoody is Kingsgrave, and their sigil is a crowned skull. The words the mod gave them are the death of kings. This is all a reference to the fact that, in the past, a member of House Manwoody apparently slew a king from the Reach, who presumably would have been a Gardener king. So they don't play a huge role in the story, but the Manwoody family all accompany Oberyn to King's Landing. So Daegos, his brother Miles, and his 2 sons, Mors and Dickon Manwoody.
Dickon.
Why has he got the pensive trait? The Manwoodies rule over all of the counties. The penultimate duchy is the Duchy of the Stoneway, which borders House Selmy and House Dondarrion, the Marcher Lords of the Stormlands. So the Stoneway, which colloquially is known as the Boneway, is a sneaky little path into Dawn. It's the other way to get into Dawn beyond the Prince's Pass. So here it's represented by a cheeky little bridge and a little path down here, going over the River Will. In the mod, they made the Stoneway an entire duchy ruled by House Will, named after the river. Or the river is named after them. Their sigil is a black adder biting a heel on yellow. Black heart, true purpose. The Wills aren't really mentioned in the main books, but they get up to some fun stuff in the history of Westeros. So during the Conquest of Dawn, they capture Prince Aemon, the Dragon Knight, and they put him in a cage above a pit of black adders. And his cousin, King Baelor, crosses through this pit barefoot to rescue his cousin, and he gets bit numerous times but he survives. Or at least that's how the story goes. So House Will is apparently a reference to the TV show Blackadder, and the mod has cheekily referenced this by having the Lord be Edmund of the Stoneway. Although I've looked at the different characters and Unless I'm missing something, I haven't found any other references beyond that. They rule all of the counties, including the barony of Blackadder itself. Last but by no means least, we have the Duchy of Ironwood, ruled by House Ironwood. It's a bit embarrassing, but when I first read the books, I genuinely thought this was pronounced Ironwood. I was like, House Ironwood? Wyronwood? What the hell? No, wait, no, I take that back. That's not embarrassing. That's a stupid name. What a stupid... So their fortress, Castle Ironwood, is the last fortress defending the Boneway, as we can see, going all the way here. It's the last bastion of defence for any armies that go down this path. And their sigil is a reference to their defensive position. A gate, a portcullis gate. We guard the way. So the Ironwoods are former High Kings of Dorne. And while they're not as powerful, they are currently the second most powerful house in Dorne. The Lord is known as the Blood Royal and the Warden of the Stoneway. They have a rivalry with House Fowler. So they've got some interesting history. This guy, Lord Edgar, found the teenage Oberyn in bed with his paramour and challenged him to a duel. Now, of course, because Oberyn is a prince, he couldn't really kill him, but he challenged him to first blood. Oberyn won this, he was a master swordsman, and he managed to cut him. But these wounds festered and Lord Edgar eventually died. As we can see here, wounded. And there are rumours abound that Oberyn poisoned the blade, and that's why his opponent passed away. These rumours have directly contributed to people calling him the Red Viper of Dorne. So anyway, as a result, Oberyn was exiled to the Free Cities, and Doran Martell gave his son Quentyn over to the new lord as a ward to be fostered, as a sort of apology. So because of this, Quentyn Martell was basically raised by Lord Ormond and then his son Anders. So a lot of Quentyn's friends and allies belong to or serve House Ironwood. So Lord Anders, in the book, has a son and 2 daughters, but of course he's only got a daughter here. Ines? Oh, never mind. Arianne hates Lord Anders, considers him to be Criston Cole reborn, in the sense that he wants Quentyn Martell to become Lord. Arianne is paranoid about her position as heir. This of course would put the Ironwoods in a powerful position, seeing as they raised him. So there's a nice touch here in the mod where the Ironwoods follow male preference primogeniture. His currently unborn son Cletus joins Quentyn in the trip to Meereen, but he's killed by pirates. That's sort of the point of Quentyn's little story. It's a bit of a subversion of the whole Chosen One and his party of friends and mentors going on a fun adventure, because they're just constantly struck by tragedy and death. Quentyn is also accompanied by Cletus's cousin, Archibald Ironwood. Here he's strong and giant. Yeah, apparently he's a big bald guy. And he's one of the few members of Quentyn's party who's still alive. I think he's currently in Meereen. The Ironwoods rule over 3 counties. The other 3 are ruled by House Drinkwater. Speaking of dumb names, Drinkwater? Huh? So yeah, they're landed knights, sworn to the Ironwoods. The Knight of Drinkwater is unnamed, but it has to be this guy, because his son is, there we are, Gerris Drinkwater, or Gerris, a longtime friend of Quentyn who grew up with him and goes along with the party. And like Archibald Ironwood, he's one of the few survivors. And he has twin sisters, Kyla and Wyla. They're unnamed in the book, but one of them gave Quentyn his first kiss. So there we have it, all the houses of Dorne. So it seems like I'm going south to north, but where shall I explore next? The Stormlands or, oh boy, the Reach? Prince Doran orders you to like and subscribe to this video. Obviously you don't have to, because, you know, he's got gout. What's he going to do about it? He's not exactly going to chase after you, is he? Thank you very much for watching.